Hello, and welcome to this deep dive into one of the most intriguing questions in science, philosophy, and even theology. Is everything we experience, our entire universe, actually a simulation? Over the next several segments, we will examine the origins of this theory, the key arguments from science and philosophy, and the perplexing evidence that has led many prominent thinkers to suggest that our world might be running on a cosmic program. We'll also consider the mind-bending implications such a scenario would have for our concept of God, our understanding of quantum mechanics, and our sense of self. This exploration is by no means conclusive. No one has discovered the final proof that we inhabit a simulated reality, at least not yet. However, even without a definitive answer, the simulation hypothesis has gained momentum, especially in light of modern advancements in computing power, virtual reality, and our ongoing struggles to interpret phenomena in quantum physics. We'll take a journey through literary works, classical and contemporary philosophy, scientific research in physics and cosmology, and the cultural impact this idea has had through films and other media. Throughout this narrative, I'll maintain a formal yet clear and accessible tone. This approach will allow us to tackle complex concepts, from the double-slit experiment in quantum mechanics to the probability-based arguments posed by Oxford philosopher Nick Bostrom, while keeping the conversation understandable. Let us set aside preconceived notions, suspend our disbelief, and embark on a quest that might redefine our entire concept of what is real. So sit back, relax, and open your mind. Let's begin by exploring the historical foundations of the simulation idea, discovering how ancient and modern thinkers alike have grappled with the notion that what we call reality may not be what it seems. Ancient roots, allegories, and skepticism. To begin, we should establish that the idea of a false reality, or an illusory world, is not a recent product of computer science. Far from it. Western philosophy traces this theme at least as far back as the ancient Greeks. Plato's allegory of the cave is perhaps the most iconic example. In this allegory, Plato describes a group of prisoners chained inside a cave, facing a blank wall. Their entire world consists of shadows projected onto that wall by objects passing in front of a fire behind them. The prisoners name, categorize, and interpret these flickering shapes as if they were the totality of existence. One prisoner eventually escapes the cave, only to discover the outside world, vastly richer and more real than anything he had ever known. Plato uses this story to emphasize the difference between appearances and reality, an essential theme that resonates with the simulation hypothesis. Similarly, in the 17th century, the French philosopher René Descartes described the possibility of a deceiving demon, or evil genius, that could implant entirely false perceptions in one's mind. Essentially, Descartes asked us to consider, how do we know that anything we sense, the sights, sounds, and textures of our world is true? Because all of this information reaches us through the conduit of our senses, it remains theoretically possible, according to Descartes, that an all-powerful deceiver is orchestrating our experiences. While Descartes did not have the language of simulation, his thought experiment is strikingly similar to the modern idea that our reality may be artificially generated. These early philosophical explorations serve as a precursor to what we now call the simulation argument. They set the stage for the fundamental question: is there a level of reality beyond what we can directly observe or measure? With the rise of digital technology and increasingly sophisticated virtual environments, this question has evolved from an abstract, philosophical puzzle to a topic that serious academics, scientists, and technology moguls discuss with surprising earnestness. In essence, Plato, Descartes, and others were grappling with the possibility that life as we know it might be incomplete or illusory. Instead of illusions cast by a fire on a cave wall or illusions spawned by an evil demon, we now talk about illusions created by advanced computing. The conceptual thread remains the same. Something outside our everyday experience might be orchestrating the entire spectacle we call reality. Literary explorations, from Philip K. Dick to The Matrix. Fast-forwarding through the centuries, we encounter modern authors and filmmakers who have brought the concept of simulated reality to popular consciousness. Perhaps the most influential figure in literature dealing with these themes is Philip K. Dick, an American writer best known for works like Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep and Ubik. Throughout his career, Dick repeatedly questioned the nature of reality. In his novel Valis, published in 1981, he confronts ideas of Gnosticism, theology, and the notion that our world might be manipulated or coded by some hidden intelligence. Dick went beyond conventional science fiction tropes, often weaving personal mystical experiences into his narratives. He once speculated that déjà vu might be a literal glitch in reality, much like a software patch being integrated into the system mid-operation. Moreover, in his Exegesis, a massive collection of personal journals and philosophical writings, he wrestled with the idea that time might be layered, or that the Roman Empire era was somehow superimposed onto our modern world. These speculations, although not always systematically rigorous, contributed significantly to the broader cultural discourse on whether reality is stable or subject to hidden manipulations. Dick's influence can be found in various cinematic and literary works, but perhaps none is more famous than The Matrix, 1999. This film, directed by the Wachowski sisters, propelled the simulation concept into mainstream awareness. In the movie, humanity is trapped inside a computer-generated world run by intelligent machines, and glitches, like the famous black cat scene, reveal moments when the code is being altered. Although the film is an action-packed narrative, its philosophical underpinnings borrow heavily from Jean Baudrillard's work, Simulacra and Simulation, and from the same Cartesian roots that asked whether our senses can be trusted. These cultural artifacts, be they novels, films, or even video games, perform a vital function. They popularize complex philosophical and scientific questions, making them accessible to a broader audience. Through Philip K. Dick's paranoia-tinged musings and The Matrix's stylish visuals, millions of people who might not have otherwise contemplated the nature of reality were provoked to wonder, if there was a glitch in my world, would I notice it? And if I did, what would that imply about everything I believe to be real? Modern philosophy and Nick Bostrom's argument. While literary and cinematic works captivate the general public, rigorous philosophical perspectives on the simulation hypothesis have been formulated by academics like Nick Bostrom. A philosopher at the University of Oxford, Bostrom published a seminal paper in 2003 titled, "Are You Living in a Computer Simulation?" This paper did not merely ask if we could be living in a simulation, it laid out a probabilistic argument suggesting we likely are. Bostrom's argument rests on the following premises. Technological growth. Given sufficient time, a technologically advanced civilization could potentially develop simulations of ancestral worlds. These simulations, hosted on ultra-powerful computational systems, would be indistinguishable from what the inhabitants perceive as real. Motivation to simulate. Such a future civilization might have strong incentives to run these simulations, perhaps for historical curiosity, scientific experimentation, or even entertainment. Number of simulations. If advanced civilizations can run these simulated realities, they might create not just one, but thousands or even millions of them, each populated by conscious agents who believe they are living in the base level of reality. Based on these points, Bostrom reasons that either A, practically no civilization reaches a level of technological maturity that would permit such large-scale simulations, B, they do reach that level but choose not to run them for ethical or other reasons, or C, if such civilizations exist and do create these simulations, then the number of simulated worlds will far exceed the number of base real worlds. If the third scenario is true, then the odds are that we are inhabitants of a simulation, simply because simulated realities would vastly outnumber real ones. It's important to note that Bostrom does not categorically claim he has proven we live in a simulation. He frames it as a tripartite conditional. But even this structure has sent waves through both philosophical circles and pop culture, as it provides a compelling formal argument to bolster what had previously been mostly literary or science fiction speculation. Another contemporary philosopher who delves into related territory is David Chalmers. In his work, Reality Plus, Virtual Worlds and the Problems of Philosophy, He discusses the ways in which virtual realities, or simulated realities, could be every bit as real to their inhabitants as our world is to us. Chalmers does not necessarily claim we live in a simulation, but he raises the idea that our classical definitions of real may need revision if simulated worlds can sustain conscious experience, autonomy, and consistent laws. These philosophical viewpoints highlight a shift from purely existential or mystical questions to methodical, analytic discourse. By applying mathematical probability, logical structuring, and philosophical rigor, Bostrom and others have anchored the simulation hypothesis within academic thought. Their work paves the way for bridging the gap between science fiction's imaginative leaps and the testable, if still speculative, realm of modern science. In essence, they remind us that the boundary between imaginative narrative and serious philosophical inquiry may be thinner than we often assume. Quantum mechanics, where science and mystery intersect. One of the most common pieces of evidence cited by proponents of simulation theory comes from the peculiar realm of quantum mechanics. This field deals with the behavior of particles at the atomic and subatomic levels, where the seemingly rigid rules of classical physics break down. Two experimental phenomena in particular, the double-slit experiment and quantum entanglement, are often referenced as hints that the universe might function like a programmed simulation. Double-slit experiment. In this experiment, scientists shoot particles such as electrons or photons at a barrier with two narrow openings, slits. Surprisingly, these particles exhibit wave-like interference patterns when not observed, patterns that imply each particle is passing through both slits at once as if it were a wave. However, the moment a measuring device is set up to detect which slit the particle goes through, it stops behaving like a wave and acts like a single particle going through one slit or the other. Proponents of the simulation hypothesis interpret this observer effect as evidence of a computational system optimizing resources. In a video game, for instance, the engine renders high-resolution graphics only where the player is currently looking. Could our universe be employing a similar strategy, only resolving reality upon measurement? Quantum entanglement. Albert Einstein famously called quantum entanglement spooky action at a distance. When two particles are entangled, a change in the state of one particle instantly affects the state of the other, regardless of the distance separating them. To date, experiments confirm that entangled particles influence each other faster than the speed of light should allow, defying classical constraints. Simulation proponents ask, could this be a sort of database lookup in the universal program, wherein entangled particles share a unified code that updates instantly? Naturally, mainstream physicists and philosophers caution that phenomena like the observer effect and entanglement have well-studied explanations within the framework of quantum theory. No cosmic computer required. The Copenhagen interpretation, the many worlds interpretation, and other theoretical models offer non-simulation explanations for these results. Nonetheless, the persistent weirdness of quantum mechanics keeps the door open for more speculative theories, including the possibility that we exist in a discrete digital cosmos. Additionally, some scientists like Edward Fredkin, Konrad Zuse, and even Stephen Wolfram have explored the idea that the universe might be fundamentally computational. Konrad Zuse proposed the Rechnender Raum, or computing space, while Wolfram's work on cellular automata in a new kind of science has also been interpreted as hinting at digital underpinnings of the cosmos. Although these theories are not universally accepted, they highlight an important trend: the idea that information and computation may be the bedrock of reality, rather than continuous fields or point particles. Scientific research and cosmic signatures. Beyond quantum mechanics, certain scientists and researchers are actively looking for more direct signatures or glitches that might betray a simulated universe. For example, Silas R. Bean and colleagues at the University of Bonn published a paper titled "Constraints on the Universe as a Numerical Simulation." They explored the idea that high-energy cosmic rays traveling across vast intergalactic spaces could reveal evidence of a discrete lattice structure underlying space-time. If the universe were running on a computational grid, akin to pixels on a screen, Extremely subtle anomalies in cosmic ray propagation might appear as a result. The challenge here is that any advanced simulator could easily design its program to mask these signatures. Just as video game designers can hide seams or rendering shortcuts, an ultra-intelligent system might engineer the simulation to pass all observational tests we devise. This leads to a skeptical or even fatalistic perspective. Even if anomalies exist, the simulator could patch them or preemptively prevent them, rendering our search ultimately fruitless. Nonetheless, the possibility of cosmic residue or anomalies has intrigued physicists. The question of whether space-time and energy are truly continuous or fundamentally discrete remains a hot topic in theoretical physics and cosmology. One of the reasons string theory and loop quantum gravity gained traction is their emphasis on discrete structures at the Planck scale. Simulators might, in theory, program those discrete structures exactly as needed to generate the universe's laws, constants, and phenomena. Another approach to validating or refuting the simulation hypothesis involves analyzing the computational complexity of simulating an entire universe. Some skeptics argue that the sheer volume of information required to render a living cosmos, complete with billions of galaxies, is astronomical. Yet proponents counter by pointing out the partial rendering concept. The simulator only needs to provide a detailed resolution of any region currently being observed, reducing computational overhead significantly. Again, much like a modern video game engine. In summary, research into cosmic signatures and the fundamental resolution of spacetime keeps the debate alive. While we do not possess conclusive evidence, the mere fact that serious scientists devote time to exploring these possibilities indicates that simulation theory has matured beyond fringe speculation. It has become a legitimate field of inquiry, albeit one that stands at the intersection of physics, computer science, philosophy, and cosmology. Psychological clues, déjà vu, and the Mandela effect. From the cosmic scale, let us move inward to the human mind. Aside from high-level physics, many everyday experiences have also been cited, albeit more controversially, as evidence of a simulated reality. Two of the most commonly referenced are déjà vu and the Mandela effect. Déjà vu. The feeling of déjà vu, that eerie sensation of having lived through a moment before, has mystified psychologists and neuroscientists for decades. While contemporary science largely explains déjà vu as a memory anomaly, a glitch in the way our brains store and retrieve experiences, some proponents of simulation theory suggest a more literal glitch in the matrix. Philip K. Dick popularized this notion when he proposed that déjà vu could be the simulation adjusting to newly uploaded code or resynchronizing with some overarching timeline. Of course, mainstream neuroscience associates déjà vu with factors like temporal lobe epilepsy, memory misfires, or simply the reactivation of familiar sensory patterns. Nevertheless, the phenomenon's universality, it occurs in a broad segment of the population, keeps speculation about simulation glitches afloat in pop culture and certain speculative circles. The Mandela effect. The Mandela effect refers to large groups of people sharing the same false memory, such as believing that Nelson Mandela died in prison in the 1980s, when, in fact, he passed away in 2013, or misremembering famous brand logos, movie quotes, or book titles. Psychologists generally attribute this collective misremembering to confabulation, social influence, and the constructive nature of human memory. Nonetheless, some who champion the simulation hypothesis see it as evidence of code updates to our simulated reality, where collective memory changes because the underlying data has been altered. It's worth noting that both déjà vu and the Mandela effect have well-researched psychological explanations. The creative, pattern-seeking minds of humans can conjure illusions of meaning or significance where simpler explanations exist. The difference lies in interpretation. Whereas mainstream scholars see these phenomena as quirks of cognition, simulation theorists interpret them as direct outcomes of a flawed or evolving computational process. Whether one leans toward conventional scientific or simulation-based interpretations, these experiences highlight a critical point. We often take our perceptions and memories at face value, assuming they faithfully represent the external world. If these perceptions are malleable or even erroneous, that raises the deeper question of whether reality is as stable and objective as we typically assume. Psychological anomalies like déjà vu or the Mandela effect, therefore, serve as microcosms of the larger debate. They challenge our confidence in a consistent, shared reality, opening the door, at least a crack, to the possibility that we live in a malleable, data-driven construct. God as the ultimate programmer. For many, the concept of God stands at the center of existential questions about the universe's origin and purpose. If we entertain the idea that our world might be a simulation, it naturally follows that some higher intelligence, a cosmic programmer, is responsible for running this sophisticated code. In religious or spiritual traditions, God is often described as omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresent. These attributes map rather closely onto the hypothetical powers of a being, or group of beings, who can manipulate the rules and contents of a simulated cosmos. Various thinkers have drawn parallels between classical theology and simulation theory. Frank Tipler, in his book The Physics of Immortality, suggests a future scenario in which an advanced civilization evolves into a superintelligent entity capable of resurrecting every conscious being that ever lived by recreating them in simulation. This cosmic intelligence, located at the omega point of universal evolution, would effectively be God, having the power to create, judge, and save within its computational domain. There are also Gnostic echoes in the simulation argument. In certain Gnostic traditions, the demiurge is an imperfect creator who crafts the material world, while a higher spiritual reality lies beyond. Some interpret the demiurge as analogous to an imperfect simulator who built our flawed reality. Meanwhile, a supreme transcendent entity would exist outside or above this simulation. Philip K. Dick engaged with such Gnostic ideas in his works, positing that our world might be a lesser creation overshadowed by a higher, more authentic domain. From a critical standpoint, detractors say that labeling a simulator God merely shifts terminology. They argue that the question of cosmic origin remains the same. Who or what created the simulator? The chain of creation is simply extended one step further. Nonetheless, the notion that God could be a programmer resonates strongly in a technological age. It provides a modern metaphor for divine action and design, one that aligns closely with the capacities we associate with advanced computing. Whether or not one subscribes to a theistic worldview, the structural similarities between God and the ultimate programmer illustrate how the simulation hypothesis intersects with timeless human inquiries into meaning, purpose, and the nature of the divine. Technological trajectories and virtual reality. Another significant driver behind the popularity of simulation theory is the astonishing pace at which our own technology has advanced. Consider the evolution of video games. In just a few decades, we've moved from simple 2D pixel graphics to incredibly lifelike 3D virtual worlds. Already, virtual reality VR headsets allow for immersive experiences that trick our senses into believing we are in entirely different environments. Augmented reality, AR, overlays digital objects onto our physical surroundings with increasingly seamless precision. Elon Musk, the well-known entrepreneur behind companies like SpaceX and Tesla, has famously remarked that if progress continues at its current rate, there will come a point when simulated environments become indistinguishable from reality. At that juncture, the possibility that we too reside in a simulation becomes more than just a speculative fancy. It edges toward probability. If advanced civilizations are billions of years ahead of us, the argument goes, then the technology to create fully simulated worlds with conscious inhabitants would be well within their grasp. To put it another way, if we can already simulate small-scale universes in computer programs, such as simulating weather systems or galaxy formations, then a civilization far more advanced could theoretically simulate an entire cosmos. Each entity within that cosmos might be conscious, if consciousness arises from computational processes, and each might believe their world is fundamentally real. Over time, the realistic capacity of these simulations would likely expand, becoming so immersive that the boundaries between base reality and the simulated environment blur. This line of thinking underscores the synergy between technological development and the simulation argument. The better we become at simulating reality, the more plausible it seems that someone or something else might have done the same thing on a vastly larger scale, using far more advanced techniques. Whether you find this notion thrilling, disconcerting, or downright terrifying, it forms a critical part of why simulation theory has captured the public imagination. As we continue to push the boundaries of VR, AR, and computing power, our own accomplishments ironically become a testament to the feasibility of the theory we may already be living within. Counterarguments and skeptical perspectives. While the simulation hypothesis has garnered significant attention, it is not without its critics. Many philosophers, scientists, and lay thinkers point to substantial challenges and shortcomings that should be addressed before declaring that everything is a simulation. Lack of direct evidence. Perhaps the most obvious critique is that we lack definitive proof. While theories and philosophical arguments abound, no experiment has conclusively demonstrated that our universe is artificial. Opponents claim that phenomena like déjà vu or the Mandela effect can be explained by human psychology, memory errors, or simple coincidences without invoking a cosmic computer. Complexity of the simulation. Skeptics often question the feasibility of simulating an entire universe down to every quark and lepton. Even if resource optimization strategies exist, only rendering detail when observed, the sheer complexity remains staggering. Detractors argue that the computational power required might exceed what any civilization, no matter how advanced, could muster. Infinite regression. Another philosophical challenge is the "who created the simulator" question. If we are in a simulation, one might ask if our simulators are themselves simulated. This line of questioning can lead to an infinite regress, which some find logically untenable. While not necessarily a disproof, it does muddy the waters by pushing the ultimate question of creation one step back. Problem of consciousness. Even if we accept that a sufficiently advanced computer could simulate physical laws and processes, there remains the hard problem of consciousness. How exactly does a string of computational instructions result in subjective experience? Thoughts, emotions, qualia? Philosophers like David Chalmers have pointed out that while simulating brains might create outward behavioral fidelity, whether that leads to genuine consciousness is still unknown. Occam's razor. A fundamental principle in science and philosophy is that the simplest explanation consistent with the data tends to be the preferred one. Critics argue that positing an entire layer of simulation on top of an already complex physical reality violates Occam's razor, adding an unnecessary level of complication. Pragmatic irrelevance. Some philosophers and scientists maintain that whether we are simulated or real makes little practical difference to our daily lives. The laws of physics, as we experience them, seem consistent. Whether these laws are the product of a base reality or an advanced simulation might not change how we conduct experiments or interpret data. These counterarguments serve as a necessary counterbalance to the enthralling possibility that reality is a program. They remind us that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and so far such evidence remains elusive. While the debate persists, skepticism acts as a valuable check, ensuring that the simulation hypothesis remains in the realm of reasoned discourse rather than drifting into unfounded speculation. Bringing it all together, a structured perspective. Let us now synthesize the various strands we have covered, from ancient philosophical thought to modern-day computing breakthroughs, and from imaginative literature to cutting-edge physics research. The simulation hypothesis stands at the crossroads of multiple disciplines, uniting them around a single staggering question: is everything we know and experience part of a sophisticated illusion? Philosophical foundations. Plato's allegory of the cave and Descartes' evil genius scenario established that human beings can be systematically deceived about the nature of reality. These age-old thought experiments remain relevant because they force us to confront the possibility that perception can be fundamentally untrustworthy. Modern academic arguments. Nick Bostrom's paper formalized the debate by showing how advanced civilizations might create numerous ancestor simulations. If such civilizations are common, the likelihood of us being in base reality dwindles. Philosophers like David Chalmers further probe the notion of what real even means in a potentially simulated environment. Scientific and cosmic indicators. Quantum mechanics, with its weird observer-dependent effects and instantaneous entanglement, has provided tantalizing fodder for those who suspect the universe might be a computational system. Researchers like Silas R. Bean have sought possible discrete signatures in high-energy physics data. Psychological phenomena. Déjà vu and the Mandela effect, while largely explained by cognitive science, are interpreted by some as direct glimpses of glitches. Though mainstream psychology finds these claims unnecessary, they continue to fascinate those inclined to view them as cracks in the simulation's facade. Technology and virtual reality. The rapid progress in VR, AR, and high-fidelity simulations underscores the plausibility that highly advanced civilizations, perhaps far older than ours, could generate entire simulated worlds populated by conscious beings. This technological trajectory is a cornerstone of the simulation argument's popularity in contemporary culture, theology, and God. Viewing God as the ultimate programmer offers a new lens on traditional religious concepts of creation and divine omniscience. Simultaneously, it raises old theological questions in modern terms. Who created the creator? If we are in a simulation, does the programmer behave like a deity to us? Skeptical voices. Finally, powerful critiques remind us that the simulation hypothesis, while captivating, is still speculative. The lack of concrete evidence, the complexity of simulating consciousness, and the potential for infinite regress all caution us to maintain a critical perspective. In bringing these points together, we see that the simulation hypothesis is not merely a fad or a fringe idea. It is a robust, interdisciplinary topic that challenges our most fundamental assumptions about existence, knowledge, and technology. While we may be far from settling this debate, the very act of questioning our reality in such a radical way can lead to new insights, both in the philosophical and scientific domains. Whether you find the simulation argument compelling or implausible, it undeniably enriches our exploration of what it means to be real. Conclusion: where do we go from here? After traversing the historical, philosophical, scientific, psychological, and theological dimensions of simulation theory, one might still wonder, what does this mean for me, for humanity, and for our understanding of the universe? The answer largely depends on your perspective, whether you view these questions through a skeptical lens, a hopeful one, or a purely academic curiosity. Practical implications. On a day-to-day basis, does it truly matter if we are in a simulation? For most of our practical endeavors, raising families, pursuing careers, enjoying art, and understanding the physical world, our reality's fundamental nature might not immediately change how we live. Gravity works, or appears to work, the same whether it is coded or natural. The rules by which we conduct science, do mathematics, and experience life remain consistent from our vantage point. Ethical and moral considerations. If our universe is indeed a simulation, what does that imply for concepts such as free will, responsibility, and morality? Are we mere NPCs, non-player characters, in a grand cosmic video game, or do we hold genuine agency? Some argue that even in a simulation, moral principles remain vital for harmonious coexistence. Others speculate that acknowledging our programmed nature might lead to a sense of futility. On the flip side, if we suspect advanced beings are observing our choices, might that encourage a more ethical lifestyle? Our choices. Might that encourage a more ethical lifestyle? Potential tests and future research. While no definitive test yet exists to prove or disprove the simulation hypothesis, scientists continue to explore indirect means, such as searching for discretization in spacetime or anomalies in cosmic phenomena. As computational astrophysics grows more sophisticated, we may learn more about the resolution of the universe. Meanwhile, quantum computing and advanced VR might offer insights into how consciousness could be emulated, or if it can arise from purely algorithmic processes. The role of curiosity. Ultimately, whether or not the simulation hypothesis is correct, it sparks a valuable sense of wonder. By asking these questions, we remind ourselves of the vastness of what we do not know. This humility, in turn, can inspire deeper inquiry, creative thinking, and a willingness to examine the nature of reality from multiple angles. Philosophical resonance. Reflecting on the possibility of a simulated reality can lead us back to ancient philosophical teachings about the illusions of sense perception, the quest for truth, and the importance of introspection. It parallels Eastern philosophies as well, such as the Hindu concept of Maya, which describes the world as illusionary or dreamlike. The simulation argument essentially repackages these timeless ideas in a modern, technological framework, bridging the gap between ancient wisdom and cutting-edge speculation. Remaining agnostic. One reasonable position is to remain agnostic about the simulation hypothesis, open to the idea, but also mindful of the enormous evidentiary bar that must be cleared to accept it. Scientific skepticism does not imply dismissiveness. Rather, it invites rigorous testing, dialogue, and the search for concrete data. In closing, whether you find the notion of living in a simulation exhilarating, unsettling, or merely intriguing, it compels us to reflect on some of humanity's deepest and oldest questions. Who are we? Why does the universe exist? Is there a creator? And if so, what is its nature? These questions predate the computer era, but modern technology and theoretical physics have given them a new vitality and direction. As our computational capabilities continue to expand, and as our understanding of quantum phenomena deepens, the debate around simulation theory is likely to evolve in profound ways. The journey does not end here. We are, in many senses, only at the beginning of exploring what simulation theory might imply. New discoveries in physics, particularly quantum gravity or unified field theories, could either reinforce or challenge the feasibility of a cosmic code. Simultaneously, breakthroughs in artificial intelligence and virtual reality could show us more of what it means to create convincing digital worlds. Whether we eventually discover that we are players in some grand design or simply advanced biological organisms in a naturally occurring universe, the pursuit of knowledge never ceases to expand our horizons. In the end, perhaps the most critical lesson of simulation theory is to remain curious, never to assume we have the final answer about the nature of reality. Our willingness to explore radical possibilities, to probe them with logic, science, and imagination, stands as a testament to the creative spirit of humankind. And if there is indeed a cosmic programmer watching, perhaps they appreciate that spirit more than anything else. Thank you for joining me on this exploration. If you found it thought-provoking, I invite you to continue the conversation with friends, family, or online communities. As complex and speculative as the simulation hypothesis may be, it undeniably enriches our quest to understand who we are and the universe we inhabit, even if that universe turns out to be, at its core, a grand simulation. Safe travels on your journey through reality, whatever form that reality may ultimately take.